We were at Toy Fair, Hasbro to rent out this, suite. And that's where we would show all of our new figures. And we were debuting him. We were showing him for the first time and people went nuts. Now, rounding out my MCU figures, this one wasn't part of the 10th anniversary. I forget what it was for, maybe an exclusive set or something like that. But this is the Infinity War Mark 50 and Iron Spider set. This is one of the last items I ever worked on when I was at Hasbro. Trying to think if this was around the time that, we took a trip out to Atlanta, went to the Marvel Studios, and I got to like walk through the Sanctum and walk on Morag. Like that was cool visiting the sets. And, I saw Robert Downey Jr.'s stunt double when he's in the tracksuit before when he leaves the Sanctum and puts his armor on. But this is kind of based off of that fight scene in a way. So, it was like, all right, how do we do another Iron Man? It's like, okay, well, in that scene, he has these gauntlets and he has the things come off his back and they're like floating. And he shoots out I forget he was fighting one of Thanos' henchmen. But it's deep in the package here. I should probably open it up and show you because it's like that cool. Man, this is stuff I haven't opened and looked at in years. But this is a really cool set. Yeah, so. Oh. So because these pieces were like floating behind him with his nanotech, I was like, can I do this big giant clear piece that plugs into his backpack or his back hole? Figures are so noisy when they come in a package. So there you go. That's like how he was in the movie because he controlled these gauntlets here. Just fix his hands. He blasted out these gauntlets and then those things came off his back and floated and blasted energy beams out at him. So it was like cool, like, we got to do that floating effect and really like, make it look like that scene from the movie. So this was fun by taking an existing figure and adding a bit of flair to it, really like plussed him up a little bit. And then he came with, at one point in that same fight scene, he busted out like a nano shield. So we got to include that. And then Spider-Man, this one, we did a new Tom Holland head. And then I was able to do the legs because I want to say, I think when it first came out, they didn't include the legs. So I got to do a version that actually came with the legs, which was nice because it made your definitive version. But then I was really happy with that Tom Holland head. I thought, it really matched his likeness. Okay, so this one has an asterisk next to it. This was another Comic-Con item I worked on. And this is my first ever Comic-Con item that I did. Now, while it's not branded Legends, it does have a Legends figure in it. This was my Ant-Man box set. This came out in, I think 2014 or 2015. Again, it's my first item. I kind of like got pushed into this item. It's like, you don't turn down working on a Comic-Con item, but it wasn't the idea we wanted to go with. But the Ant-Man movie was coming out and, trying to, surround PR with it. But it was an Ant-Man set, and it was, I think, the first time we ever did multiple scaled figures in one set. We got the 4-inch Hank Pym, we got the 6-inch Goliath, and then the 12-inch Giant Man. Excuse me. And then we got some miniature guys down here. It was fun because, again, got to do a bunch of different scales. But this is a Legends figure. So because it's a Legends figure, I think it counts as a Legends item. So I'm going to go with it. This is another item. So my first Comic-Con item, but, one of multiple Comic-Con items that I did. And to me, it's an unofficial Legends item. Okay, this is where it gets exciting. These are my first ever full Build-A-Figure waves. I got the privilege of taking over the Spider-Man waves, which I had worked on Spider-Man for several years when I first started at Hasbro. So I was like, yes, give me Spider-Man. He was such a fun character to do. You know, they were just getting ready for, trying to think, Homecoming was the first one, and then No Way Home or Far From Home. Whatever the second one was, that's what we were, oh, it's on the package. Far From Home. We're getting ready to do the Far From Home figures. So I got to do 2 waves of Spider-Man Legends that year. One was movie-centric, and then one was classic-centric. However, there are classic figures, mixed in with the movie wave. So this is the movie wave. This was the Molten Man Build-A-Figure. If you remember in the movie, Mysterio, he made all these CGI kind of visions and stuff, and he did a Molten Man. Now, Molten Man was enormous. Like, he was huge. But I was like, oh, he's still cool looking, so, like, let's find a way to do it. So we're, based on the reference that we got from Marvel. So I'll go through the movie characters first, and then I'll get into the classic guys, because I like the classic guys better. So here we had 3 movie characters. We had Mysterio and 2 Spider-Man. Mysterio was just cool because he's probably one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. And he looked really cool in the movie. So, pretty straightforward. We knew we weren't going to do a Jake Gyllenhaal likeness. I don't even know if they knew Jake Gyllenhaal was going to be Mysterio at that time. But, we ended up basing him on how he looked in the movie, and he was pretty straightforward. Spider-Man, in the movie, he had 2 different costumes, or 3 different costumes. I think in the beginning he was in the blue and red, and then he lost his suit, or his suit got taken away. I forget. I don't remember the movie all that well. And then he went to like this shield kind of suit, and he had like it almost looked like a Black Widow suit, but he had like the flip up lenses and stuff. It was just cool, all black suit. I mean, way to do black costume Spider-Man, but it was just something different. And then at the end of the movie, he got the red and black suit. At least I remember at the end of the movie it was a red and black suit. I'm sure you guys will correct me if I'm wrong. But again, straightforward, regular Spider-Man. But for me, it's like, I love the classic characters. So it's like anytime you can do classic comic book characters was great. So here was a Spider-Woman. She hadn't been done yet. She was some new parts, some existing parts. But, the female characters, you had to give them the biggest Build-A-Figure parts because they took up less space. And Molten Man was huge, so she had his 2 or 3 part torso with him. All right, next up is Hydro Man. He came with Molten Man's head. Hydro Man is obviously a classic, Spider-Man villain. Now, I wanted to do him sort of how he looked in the animated series. He had the black t-shirt and the jeans kind of look to him. And, you had to get really creative with the way you do them because, you couldn't do them all water because I couldn't tool new figures. So this is like, I think the Luke Cage from the Defenders set. It's his torso, but I did like new watery arms. And then for his water on his feet, they just kind of snap on and sit in front of him like his feet are turning into water. It was the best I could do with what I was working with. But I think he came out absolutely awesome. Let's see. Gotta take a drink before I get a little upset with this one. So this was Scorpion. Now, this one was kind of ruined for me by somebody. So I wanted to do Scorpion, another classic villain. I said, hey, can I do a bendy tail? Yeah. He's a lot of new parts because of all the, the recessed lines in him. Now, he was kind of drawn with his cowl where just like his mouth almost looked like part of the cowl, almost like Destro's mask. So when his mouth is moving, it looks silly. He wasn't always drawn that way, though. Sometimes he was drawn with his cowl open, like a Batman cowl. And to me, that's the way he should have been. He was drawn both ways. I decided to design him the way he looked here. So, sculpted the figure that way. He's got lines for his cowl. We decoed him up, the model shop painted him the way I wanted him, and he was approved that way. And they did him on the packaging that way because he was meant to be that way. And then after I left, a person who I used to consider a friend decided he was going to take matters into his own hands because he didn't like the way I did this. And he also didn't like the way I did my next Build-A-Figure. But I was the designer. It's my call. It's not your call. You're supposed to be there and just painting it. You paint what I design. I left. He snuck in there and decided to paint the face. Even though there's sculpted lines for the cowl because he should look like this and he's on the packaging that way. So now it's like, okay, so you wanted to flex your muscles and take matters into your own hand and do what you wanted to do when it wasn't meant to be that way. So now it just looks wrong. It just looks wrong and ridiculous. Now they ended up doing this figure in the animated line. And then they did his cowl the right way, like this. So it was like, okay, I got a little bit of retribution, but you still messed up this figure. So congratulations for thinking you want to do things your own way. Then, last up, we had Doppelganger. Now, with Marvel, with when you're working on these lines, like when you did new tooling, sometimes you have to justify using something twice or 2 or 3 times to get use out of the tooling. I talked about it with the motorcycles on the vehicle line. So it was that way for Doppelganger, and when I talk about the next wave, you'll see where I got the second use out of him. But I love that whole Maximum Carnage storyline, so I was like, yes, let's do Doppelganger. A lot of people think he wasn't big enough, like he was drawn bigger, almost like Venom size. I don't think he was. I always thought he was like slim like Spider-Man, but everyone has their own opinion of him. This is one where, I'll talk about the torso when I get to the next figure, because this wave actually came out second. My first Spider-Man wave is what I'll talk about last. All right, here we go. This is my pride and joy here. This is my the last Legends stuff I'm going to talk about that I worked on. It's not the last stuff I worked on, but it's going to be how we're going to end this video because this is my favorite. This is my other wave of Spider-Man. This is actually the first wave that came out before the movie wave. This is all classic. Now this is the infamous Kingpin Build-A-Figure wave. I'm going to talk about why it's infamous in a second. So I'm going to put Kingpin to a side because I'm going to talk about him last. And I'm going to move some of these guys. Let's talk about my least favorite ones from this set first. So at the time, when you're putting the waves together, it's not just me deciding everything. It's me, the marketing team, the engineer, the whole. We're as a team. We brainstorm, and everyone kind of gets like a pick. And then normally, like Jesse from Marvel, he gets his picks in there. His picks were never good. I say that because we got stuff to back it up. I remember for the Guardians of the Galaxy wave, it was the tightest Build-A-Figure. And I remember at Comic-Con, when they debuted Titus, they unveiled Titus in the panel room, and there was literally crickets. Like crickets. Silence. People were just like, what? One, it was like, who was Titus? And two, it's like, that's your Build-A-Figure? Now, the Marvel team was pushed to do that. And it was like, what a terrible character. For the Build-A-Figure, you want your Build-A-Figure to be like an amazing character. And it just wasn't that way. So this was a situation where something happening in publishing, a storyline, pushed us to do figures. It sucked because it wasted 2 slots that we could have used. But they were doing this symbiote storyline where like everyone became like a symbiote or something like that. So you had, they called him Red Goblin. We were calling him Carnage Goblin. But yeah, he was like, I think Green Goblin got like infected by Carnage's symbiote or something. And it's like, he looked okay, but it was just like, I didn't want to do this figure, but it was like, we got pushed to do it because it was happening in publishing. Same thing with this black costume Spider-Man. He had like clawed hands and clawed feet and like these eyes that like flared out. He wasn't anything special, but again, it's like, okay, kind of sucked that we got pushed to do him. What are you going to do? There's another point I was going to make about that. Oh, when you're picking the stuff, I've talked about this before several times on podcasts and stuff about how like you weren't allowed to do the whole library wasn't available. The whole Rogues Gallery was like some things were like off limits certain years, and it's because like Marvel didn't want to pay certain creators royalties. So each year we would get like known about who was off the no-fly list. The one character, my all-time favorite Spider-Man villain is Cardiac. And I pushed for him every wave, the 2 waves I did. And we got told no every time. And to this day, he's still a no. They haven't done Cardiac. And I think because whoever the creator is, maybe Eric Larson, they don't want to pay a royalty to. So that's why you can't do Cardiac. So rounding out this wave, we had Silver Sable. You know, this is one of her looks, one of her multiple looks. But again, it's like sometimes you have to pick slightly easy figures to do. You know, you can't just, do, whatever version you want. It's like, or it's like, hey, we don't have tooling enough. So it's like, what are the easy figures to do? And Silver Sable is kind of like, that easy figure to do. So she was fine, but, not a banger. Let's do another female. We got to do Black Cat. Now, this is the way Black Cat was looking in the comics at the time. My boss at the time, he got to do Black Cat. That was a little more voluptuous, maybe too voluptuous. So we got to really like slim her down. This I ended up using a bunch of parts from the Black Widow that came with the motorcycle. So I was familiar with those parts and, got to do a few new things with her. She's fine. She came out great. But again, wasn't crazy about it, but it was what it was. This is like, here we go. My 3 favorites here. All right. Night Thrasher. I love 90s comics. And he was like, Night Thrasher was like the epitome of 90s comics. He came with batons, he was red and black, and he came with a skateboard. Like, you can't beat that for 90s. But I knew he was very high up there on my list to do. He was also fairly easy to do. It wasn't a ton of new parts. But again, people like really wanted Night Thrasher. It's like, people love those obscure 90s characters. So that's why we're able to get away with doing him. And next up, very classic Spider-Man villain. This is Puma. He was another one very high on my list. Not as high as Cardiac. But, he wasn't terribly hard to do. I'm trying to remember like what parts were reused and what weren't, but I can't now. But he was cool. He came out perfect. Like everything about him was exactly how I wanted him to look. Very classic look. All right. And second to last, we have 6-arm Spider-Man. I'm trying to remember. I think he only appeared this way in like 1 or 2 issues, but he's iconic. Like people always knew the 6-arm Spider-Man. And, being able to do him and Doppelganger, it was like, because he came first, it was like, all right, well, what's your other use at him? I'm like, cool, I'll do him and then I'll do Doppelganger. Now, with this one, because you can't just use all the bodies at one time, because say someone else is using the tools for a certain body and this and that, it was called like tooling capacity. I couldn't use the pizza Spider-Man body. So I had to use, this is the movie Spider-Man, because you could see that Andrew Garfield had that scaling to him. So we had to make all the parts have that scaling to match. That was how we got away with using existing parts. So I got to use existing legs, existing arms. I think I did a new head, and then the torso and the new arms. Now, this is one where, because he had the extra arms, I couldn't do torso articulation. My engineer told me you can't fit everything. It just won't work. Now it turns out they're doing him. They redid him. So it's like, oh, and they did him with torso articulation. I'm like, oh, thanks. But I was only going by what I was told I could do. I was told I couldn't do torso articulation, so I had to abide by those rules. But again, very cool Spider-Man. I know, Shartimus Prime, what else is new, loves to complain. He complained, oh, it doesn't have torso articulation. Why don't you go design figures? Oh, wait, no, you're not. But it's like, yeah, he didn't have torso articulation, but would you rather not have this figure at the time or what? So this is the way I gave you the figure, and people seem to like it because it's sold out. So that was the wave. But the finale of that wave is this guy. This was the Kingpin Build-A-Figure. And I remember, you know, doing this wave, he was the only choice. Like, it was like, yeah, for the classic wave, he was the choice. And I remember, you know, Jesse from Marvel, who had to do the approvals, fought us on this. He was just like, why do you want to do Kingpin? It wasn't like we couldn't. He was just like, why do you want to? And I was like, he's one of the most popular Spider-Man and Daredevil villains ever. And I remember him telling me, he's just a fat guy in a suit. I remember like, don't let the fans hear you say that, because he's not just a fat guy in a suit. He's like one of the best villains. And then I remember we were at Toy Fair, and we were in this hotel room. Hasbro to rent out this you know, suite, and that's where we would show all of our new figures. And we were debuting him. We were showing him for the first time, and people went nuts. And I remember after all, like, the press, people were in there seeing it for the first time. I was standing next to Jesse. People were going nuts, and one guy was like, dude, best Build-A-Figure you've ever done. And I kind of nudged Jesse, and I said, just a fat guy in a suit, huh? And I think he played it off like he didn't know what I was talking about. He's like, huh? And I'm like, remember you just said he was just a fat guy in a suit? And I think he made a joke. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, well, yeah, Titus and then fat guy in a suit. Come on. But we got to get Kingpin made, and I'm glad that we did. Now, he caused a little bit of turmoil on the team because while Kingpin was great, I did not like his purple pants and his yellow vest. I thought that was just so kind of cheesy looking. Now, coming off the heels of the 12-inch line, I like things a little more grounded. I treated my stuff as if I was like Christopher Nolan, you know, doing it. It's like, make it a little more grounded. You know, he's a, like, Kingpin, he's a mobster, this head guy. Like, he wouldn't be wearing purple pants and a yellow vest. He would look classy and menacing. So I decided to put him in a full white suit, alligator shoes, pinky ring, you know, white vest, black shirt, but I gave him the purple tie. That was where, you know, the purple tie and purple ascot. That was like my kind of throwback. And I remember the same model shop painter who messed up Scorpion was pushing hard. And I remember he even like went over my head, went to my boss, like, hey, and my boss came to me. I'm like, no, this is my wave. And I played that card. I was like, I don't tell you what to do your wave. You don't tell me what to do my wave. This is how I'm doing it. Said, fine. So luckily I was still there to make sure that no one did anything behind my back. But he was cool looking. He was very cool looking. And because I didn't do him in the purple pants and the yellow vest, it gave them the opportunity to do him like that on the animated card. So I gave you your second use out of him. So you're welcome. You're welcome that I didn't do it, because otherwise what would you do? You done him twice in that color pattern? But I'm extremely proud of this figure. He's in my office. I don't have much Marvel stuff in my office, only some of my choice favorite things. He is definitely there because I'm very proud of him. He came out really, really awesome. You know, we had to get creative with the way we were doing his knees to, you know, because he's wearing a suit and stuff. You know, just a fat guy in a suit. So how do you make him look cool? Well, we made him look cool. But again, cool stuff like the little things like the detail, the pinky ring, you know, the alligator shoes. Like that, it made this figure very, 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 very cool. And you know, that's why he's like my favorite Marvel thing. Like him and World War II Cap, definitely my favorite 6-inch Legends thing that I ever did. So there's a little backstory on my full run of 6-inch Legends. I hope you guys kind of enjoyed it. It was, you know, when you think about it, it wasn't a long run, but there was a lot of items that I got to work on, and really, really good items over, you know, a few years. It would have been great to have worked on more, but I'm very happy with the stuff I worked on. Oh, hold on. See, I'm messing up left and right here. I missed one because he was loose. He wasn't in package. This was the 80th anniversary. Where's his box? Oh, because it's down here. That's why I missed it. So, I'm trying to remember. I'd have to go back and look because I may have missed other ones that I worked on. It was a while ago, guys. And I've done a lot of Action Force figures since then. They did, after the MCU 10th anniversary, they did this Marvel 80th anniversary kind of thing. Just 80 years of Marvel in general. And I got to do a new classic Thor. Thor's my favorite Avenger. So he is probably in my top 3. It goes him, Kingpin, World War II Cap. But this one was awesome because I got to do a lot of him is all new tooled parts. And he came out great. He was a really, really cool figure. It's got the, the wording on his hammer, the Thor oath there. He was great. I mean, the only thing that I would have done differently is probably given him a soft goods cape. But that's okay. I did the soft goods on the 12-inch line. So I'm glad I just saw that because that was the last one. So let me just end it here. Let me bring, my 3 favorite guys into the picture here. My 3 favorites of my run on Marvel Legends. It was a great run, great items. I'm very happy with it. Thank you guys for checking out this video. Hope you enjoyed it. We have brand new content coming out every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Make sure you're liking and subscribing to the channel. And make sure that if you dig this content, you're going and looking at our library of older content because we have a ton of great videos for you to check out. So, hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you on the next one.